Um, Good morning, everybody. Really delighted to be here today at Devworld. There is undoubtedly a huge amount of really exciting content throughout the event and the conference, so I'm really honoured and humbled that you've chosen to come and hear a little bit about what I've got to say in the world of augmented reality. I'm going to talk a little bit about Make My Day, what Make My Day is, and where we're from and what we're about, because that will help, I guess, kind of frame some of our philosophy and our approach to augmented reality. I have a fundamental belief, and I'm sure that lots of other people share this belief, that AR is the next great digital advertising format, and I'll dig into what I mean about that a little bit later. There's so much brilliant technology on display here, and there's so much brilliant craft on display here, but what I'm really going to be talking about is the augmented audience, the audience in augmented reality, and why they are so valuable to brands. So my background is predominantly platform side. I spent 7.5 years at Snapchat as the Global Director of Creative Strategy, building the team that helped launch great formats like vertical video, stories, augmented reality, helping to scale that, working with our wonderful brand partners there. Before that, I spent 3 years at Twitter as the head of brand strategy, helping to launch some of their products and formats, promoted tweets, trends, moments. So my background is very much in looking at ad formats, new digital ad formats, and helping them to grow and scale with the application of creativity and creative strategy. When I was at Snap, what I started to see, and I'm sure lots of other people have noticed this as well, but the audience within augmented reality was growing massively, but also the experience that the format represented offered a way for brands to turn up in people's lives in very different, useful, fun, meaningful ways. So when we launched the agency and we called it Make My Day, we did have a slight concern that people would think that we were massive fans of Clint Eastwood and sort of slightly aggressive 70s cop dramas. That is not the case. We called the agency Make My Day because we fundamentally believe that AR is transforming and changing the way that brands are able to communicate with people and connect with people. And what we actually mean and think about in these terms is it helps brands turn up in a more positive way. And that's baked into our philosophy. It's how we turn up for each other in the office. It's how we turn up for our partners. It's how we help our partners turn up for the people that they want to communicate with. Because after all, positivity is contagious, right? Positivity makes people happy. Happy people make people happy. I was doing a talk, and I was on a list for a talk, and I thought that this framed actually a sort of a representation of it to a certain degree, but not necessarily a true representation. I was quoted as saying, I was on a bill with a lot of good people talking about brilliant digital craft, and someone referenced it as somebody needs to talk to us about the grubby subject of making money. Will Scougal gives the lowdown on marketing to people who are already engaged and waiting to spend bare coin in augmented reality. For those of you that are unfamiliar with London slang, bare coin means lots of money, basically. What I am going to be talking about is how to leverage the audience in a way that's beneficial for marketers, right? How to bring brilliant craft into high attention spaces. It'll be mainly kind of data and philosophy and thinking, and there'll be a couple of examples of work as well. But hopefully I am going to end up in a space where I've helped some people make bare coin. So one of the ways that we're starting to talk about augmented reality and the augmented audience is as a force multiplier. There is a ton of research, and we'll have a little bit of a look at some of it, coming out from platforms, coming out from hardware businesses, coming out from research centers, just showing and highlighting that when you apply augmented reality as an incremental layer of attention to a marketing campaign, it has an incremental impact on the efficacy and the performance of that campaign, no matter what you're looking for, whether it's top funnel awareness, mid funnel consideration, bottom funnel action. Augmented reality can have an impact everywhere as a force multiplier within the mix. And that's the way that we need to start thinking about augmented reality, not just as a single one-off innovation format where we can do something beautiful like bring gorillas to Times Square, but actually start to think about it as a proper digital marketing format. The reason that we want to think about it like that is because the augmented audience we believe, is the most engaged on mobile. So I don't know how many of you work in creative agencies or media agencies or production houses, but I can guarantee you that on every desk in all of those places, it's brands looking for one thing, and that is the attention of people. That is every media agency brief and every creative agency brief everywhere in the world, bar none, full stop. And attention exists in abundance in augmented reality. People are actively engaged. If you think about it, you have to choose to open the experience. You have to interact with the experience to use it, or even just to make it go away. You're 100% focused on what's happening in your hand at that moment. You are actively engaged. So when we think about the augmented audience, some people think, what? The augmented who? What are you talking about, the augmented audience, right? If we boil it right back down to the beginnings of advertising and marketing, it's really simply that brands want to be where people are. So who are the augmented audience and where are they? Now, this data isn't my data. This is third-party data coming from a mix of different places like Statista, eMarketer, places like this. You can find this data anywhere to qualify it, but there are source links as well. If we take a step back and remove the idea of augmented reality and social AR from just being all about Snapchat or all about Meta-owned or all about TikTok or all about web, and just look at the total audience, it's about 1.7 billion people a month using augmented reality, a version of what we understand augmented reality to be, all right? A digital layer on the world. 1.7 billion people a month. Imagine launching a platform today and bringing it to market and saying, we've got 1.7 billion people on our platform all around the world. The only way you can advertise to them is through experiences that they choose to spend time with, that are 100% of the screen, that are hyper-personal, where they're actively engaged. People would be really interested in that as a platform and a way to advertise to people. The audience overall is growing about 300,000 people a year and is rapidly approaching 2 billion. I actually think that those numbers are too conservative, right? That's third-party data. But if you think about it, actually, is it just 1.7 billion? I think it's much, much more. If we dig into it a little bit and break it down, 800 million people a month on Instagram, 300 million people a day on Snapchat, making 6 billion snaps a day with augmented reality. That's a huge amount of content. What about all of the people that are simply seeing that content? 1 in 4 TikToks has an effect applied to it, right? And from a web point of view, if you talk to production houses that work in web AR, and this is not an untrue fact, the entirety of the internet has the potential to access web AR. That's not untrue, but are they doing it? Not necessarily. It really depends on a load of different factors. But I think the 1.7 billion people a month number is a lowball number. And it's actively, rapidly growing and approaching 2 billion plus, and will do by the end of this year. I think one of the issues that we have with AR and social AR in particular is each of these platforms talks about AR differently, right? TikTok talk about effects, Snapchat talk about lenses, Meta and Instagram talk about Spark AR. I think that the disjointed narrative around augmented reality is doing a disservice to the audience and the size of the audience that's available to marketers. Just to put that into some context for you, so what's a comparable audience? Well, another really high attention format, digital audio, right? Podcast advertising. The podcast advertising audience, the digital audio audience, will reach 1.55 billion in 4 years' time. So it's projected to reach that number in 4 years. So the augmented audience, the audience in augmented reality, is today larger than the digital audio audience, larger than it will be in 4 years' time. And we need to start thinking about it as one singular audience. I've desperately tried to make this slide look more interesting with a burst of pink in the background. I hope people appreciate that high-tech PowerPoint craft. This is a really straightforward slide. You can look at this in a number of different ways, but effectively it's just saying, and I'm sure everyone here already knows this, people are doing the things that they do in their daily lives now in augmented reality. It's becoming a more recognized, a more used, more normalized behavior, right? Trying new paint colors, trying on and buying new clothes, trying and buying new makeup. And this has massive implications for e-commerce just at that level, let alone what it means for trial and purchase and the impact that that might have in things like the environment, traveling to and from shops, returns for people. There are massive implications for this across the entire retail spectrum. All of this is building up to one other really important piece of data. And again, this is when we bring together all of those fragmented statistics from different platforms. And again, this is third-party data. This is not just my maths. This is data from Statista. Augmented reality is the second fastest growing mobile ad format behind mobile, or second fastest ad format, digital ad format behind mobile video. Right? If you think about the spectrum and scale of revenue and opportunity within mobile advertising, actually hearing that AR is the second fastest growing is quite a surprising statistic, even for me. So what does that really mean? Like, how do we start to apply that thinking and start to address that audience? Every brief is about change. I think like that might be an oversimplification for some people, but if you think about it, what are we really trying to do with every brief that we've got? Right? Certainly from a marketing and advertising point of view, we want to change the way people feel, what they think, what they know about us, how they feel about our values, how they behave around our brand. We're changing everything all the time. In order to drive change, we need the fundamental ingredients of what makes advertising work. But the problem is with change that people are afraid of it, right? That's just been a constant through time. And I'm sure that anyone involved in creating new innovative products, trying to bring them to market, trying to get funding, the first time round in those cycles, it takes a lot of persuasion and a lot of explanation of how to get people to understand what it is you're doing and what that innovation means for people at large, right? And that's been going since the dawn of time. There's a great story about when Edison first invented the light bulb. I'm sure some of you know this. He could only find one investor, one place for funding, one person that would believe in his product. It's a banker called JP Morgan. Some of you may have heard of JP Morgan. He invested in Edison's light bulb, and to prove to people that Edison's light bulb wasn't a danger, they didn't need to be scared of it. He had the light bulb, the electric light bulb, installed throughout his home, throughout his New York townhouse mansion. He was very proud of it. It was there for about 2 weeks before JP Morgan came home to find that Edison's light bulb had burnt down his entire house and his library through a fault. But he didn't shirk from the idea. He believed in it. Right? He knew that there was something in this, so he rebuilt the house with the electric light bulb embedded inside it. So I guess with this story, really what I'm encouraging people to do is to keep going with innovation, to keep going with the audience, to keep going with augmented reality, because the changes are evident everywhere, not just in the data that I'm showing you here, but in all of the innovation and craft that we're seeing at this event too. When we think about the ingredients for effective advertising, so how do we apply this to the work that we're doing? They are abundant in augmented reality, right? This is the formula for great advertising, great marketing. And this has been the formula since day one. People do not need to be afraid of AR, right? It's not complex, it's not difficult. There might be elements of the creative craft that can be, but when it comes to a marketing perspective and understanding the audience, this hasn't changed, right? In order to drive change, we need attention. Without attention, we can't communicate anything. When we have attention, we make our messaging stick by making it relevant, right? Right person, right place, right time. We've already said that augmented reality has got massively high attention. It's also massively relevant. There's no pure articulation of right person, right place, right time than me choosing to open up an experience in the place that I am and seeing myself in the ad, right? No amount of yes, AI can make that experience richer, more different, more varied, but it's personalized by me being in it. There's absolutely a role for high volume, high impact, short in-feed personalized content to play in a marketing mix, but AR is hyper-personalized. At scale, as we've already said, around 1.7 billion people a month, and all of that comes together to drive change. Again, just so I can prove this out with third-party data, this is a piece of research some of you may be familiar with. A company called Neuro Insight UK worked with a media agency called Mindshare, and they monitored the levels of attention in people using augmented reality and compared it to other media formats. The key outtake, it's a great paper, you can find it online, but the key outtake was that augmented reality delivers 45% higher levels of attention than we see for standard TV viewing or online browsing, which is just incredible. Hyper-relevant, so just an example of that, like this is me just over there a few moments ago doing the last finishing touches to the deck, just using a Make My Day branded AR experience that we brought together. But again, the hyper relevancy of me being in the moment, in the place that I am, using that branded experience. There's no greater level of personalization. Again, this is data coming out from each of the social platforms backing up the idea that AR is a force multiplier. On the right-hand side here, on this one up here, the key takeout from that, I won't go through this in huge amounts of detail, but this was a piece of research from Dentsu, media agency, where they say that in order to get the same level of attention that they were running in AR with video, they'd have to run 14 to 20 times the amount of video to get the same levels of attention that they were finding in augmented reality. The TikTok research there on the right-hand side basically says that when you run effects and AR with video, it improves performance on every aspect of what they measure. To kind of get to just the last few slides here, just to wrap this up, I thought I'd talk about, we've spoken a little bit about importance and the marketing strategy and how that plugs into kind of the fundamentals. This is how we think about it from a content planning perspective when we're thinking about how we bring brands into certain moments. Usually, AR is applied in the top right-hand side of this quadrant up here in the top right, where there's a sort of broad reactive or paid media type of activation, and it's usually just one build, one tactic that's built, and then that will stagnate, and it will be left to kind of roll on. We now have the opportunity to think about AR like a proper digital marketing format that can be applied to lots of different KPIs, lots of different objectives, targeted to lots of different audiences, retargeted. We don't have to build the biggest, brightest, most beautiful thing every single time. We need to start to think about augmented reality as a digital advertising format that can connect with the augmented audience in a variety of different ways. To give you an example, I'm going to play a piece of work that actually, this was from a few years ago, but this was done with an agency called Go Spooky, who are here somewhere, I think. A brilliant Dutch agency that we worked with a lot at Snap. This is a partnership between us and the Design Museum, where we used augmented reality on what I would call the kind of high end of high craft, like built a machine learning model, created an expert AI to launch a new sneaker within the design space. So this is kind of one example of one part of the of the type of activity we could do.
2021, faced with the challenges of lockdown, the Design Museum in London sought out a way to draw in new crowds and reimagine the museum experience. Their solution? Partnering with Snapchat. The partnership launched alongside Sneakers Unboxed, an exhibition that showcased 200 of the most iconic sneakers. The Design Museum set out to create engagement on a new level through Snapchat's cutting-edge AR and machine learning technology. How? Sneaker Zero. The first shoe to be entirely generated by a computer, designed with machine learning and launched solely in AR. To create the shoe, the machine scanned thousands of images and the 200 iconic sneakers from the exhibition to learn the characteristics of great sneaker design and graduate into a proper sneakerhead. Then finally unveiling Sneaker Zero. Media outlets and hypebeasts were sent a sneak peek. Shoeboxes containing only a snap code. The exhibition attendees got the full experience, surrounded by the most iconic sneakers. They were met with an interactive showcase that prompted them to open Snapchat, scan a snap code, and unlock Sneaker Zero. Snapchatters could then point their camera at their feet and try on the AR shoes. The coolest part? Sneaker Zero identifies the colors the user is wearing and alters the sneaker to match. Sneaker Zero created an entirely new experience for museum attendees. The partnership with Snapchat drew in new audiences and helped drive the museum's second highest exhibition pre-sale, which had prime weekend spots selling out while earning over 80 pieces of media coverage internationally. Sneakers Unboxed and Sneaker Zero not only celebrated the evolution of sneaker design, but also gave a glimpse into the future of augmented museum experiences.
So there's a couple of reasons why I like to show that example. It's looking at new product development. How do we build machine learning and AI that can help us develop and design new products and then launch them in augmented reality, creating experiences that draw people footfall into a space, also launching them in a way that drives press coverage, media attention, that engages influencers as well. There's a whole lot going on there in terms of what you can do with AR, and that's there in that kind of high craft element. Tom from Go Spooky is speaking actually a little bit later on this stage. I can thoroughly recommend that talk. Hang on, sorry, I'm just clicking on.
In
God. Sorry. So that's that kind of like high craft, like lots of bells and whistles, high craft augmented reality. But the simpler stuff that we're trying to kind of get going more frequently, this might be more recognizable to some of you as a like simple sticker picker execution. We did this with Adidas. We were launching Adidas Originals in North America, engaged again with a group of stylists to launch the format and then publish it out on social channels. It's a really simple execution, but what it results in is thousands of hours of framed and branded content with people talking about the brand in the way the brand want them to be talking about them. So really simple effect, but actually really powerful. I'm sure lots of people are very aware of this type of narrative. We are going through a massive change in the way that people communicate and the way we can bring brands into people's lives. I won't labor this point too much, but the age of spatial computing is coming. It's upon us. It's here right now. And people are doing it and have been doing it for quite a long time within social spaces. Social AR is massive. The key difference I think people need to start thinking about is no one is picking up their phone and going, oh, I'm going to use some AR now. I'm going to do some spatial computing now. They're just going on to platforms with massive scale and massive reach and using the tools and the things that make them happy, make it easy for them to communicate, entertain them, add use to the way that they use the platforms. It's a really simple, everyday, native thing and native behavior for them, and it's just growing every day. And that's why we think that augmented reality is a force multiplier for marketers, and that the augmented audience offers a way for brands to turn up in people's lives in fun, useful, meaningful, helpful ways, and actually create advertising that does make people's day and doesn't just interrupt it and shout at them. Thank you very much. I'm really, really grateful for your attention. And please do give me a shout if you like.